Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
And it's great to be here with Lisa and Joy. The reading this morning is actually a fable titled The Dog and the Heartless King. And it was written by someone with an unusual name, Author Unknown. Get it? See what I did there, Joy? Once upon a time, there lived a king who cared for nobody but himself. He had grown rich from the high taxes he had forced his people to pay, while they had become poorer and poorer. He lived in a gorgeous palace, while the poor people who built it for him still lived in thatch huts and tumble-down hovels. The king's table was always heaped with delicious foods, while most of his people had only one plain meal a day, and sometimes not even that. But the heartless king did not care. If he had what he wanted, that was enough for him. By the way, this is not a political statement. You may be wondering about that. One day, a hunter came to the palace gate, intending to teach the heartless king a lesson. The hunter brought with him an enormous dog. The king was fond of hunting, and this enormous dog fascinated him. So the hunter and the dog were both welcomed onto the palace grounds. But the enormous dog was no ordinary dog, and her bark was like the roar of thunder. The first time she opened her big mouth and barked, the awful noise shook the walls of the palace and frightened the king. If the dog had stopped with one or two barks, the matter might have been forgotten. But again and again, her fierce roaring shook the palace and the earth itself. Before long, there was no resting between barks. Nobody in the palace could hear themselves talk. The king was desperate and sent for the hunter. He asked, "Why does your dog make such a deafening noise?" "The dog is hungry," said the hunter. Immediately, the king ordered that a big plateful of meat be brought. In almost no time at all, the enormous dog licked the plate clean. Then at once she began barking again. A second plateful of meat was brought. This the dog disposed of just as quickly as the first, and again the dogs began barking. Over and over the plate was filled, and over the enormous dog quickly ate the whole plateful and began barking as loudly as ever. The king was angry. He called the hunter and asked, "Will nothing satisfy the hunger of your enormous dog?" "Nothing that is easy for you to give," said the hunter. "Your Majesty, there are people in this kingdom who are eating all the food and who are not sharing it with those who do the work in the field to make the food grow. As a result, there are people who are always hungry. This dog feels the hunger of every person in this kingdom who does not have enough food to eat. As long as even one person is hungry, this dog will be hungry and she will keep barking." The king called his wise advisors together and said, "What shall we do?" The advisors responded, "We see no choice. Everybody in the kingdom must somehow be fed." The king responded immediately, "Put all the servants on the palace grounds to work at once. Go to the storerooms and get all the bags of rice you can find. Take also meat from my cupboards and gather vegetables and fruits from my gardens. Send servants out with these loaded carts into all the towns and villages in my kingdom. Give them generously of these foods and keep on giving food until not a single person in the land is hungry." The advisors hurried away to do as their king commanded. Presently, a long line of carts piled high with bags and baskets of food rolled out through the palace gate. All day long and day after day, the carts kept going until they had gone to every village in the land and until food was taken to every house where somebody was hungry. At last, the day came when the enormous dog finally stopped barking and lay down quietly beside the king's chair. The dog was satisfied. All the people inside the palace grounds were happy and at peace in their minds. Everywhere in the land, the people were contented. For the next few years, the enormous dog stayed by the king's side to be sure the king never reverted to his old ways. A few times the dog barked to remind the king about justice, and each time the king remembered the important lesson he had learned. Finally, the dog was convinced the king truly understood the meaning of justice. One morning, she simply got up, walked out of the palace, and went to bark for justice in a new land. In 2003, the researchers Sarah Brosnan and Franz de Waal conducted a fairness experiment using capuchin monkeys. They trained these monkeys to do a simple task. Each was given a rock, and they had to give the rock back to the researcher. That was it. Each time they performed the task, they were rewarded with cucumbers. Now, monkeys will work for cucumbers, but they're not crazy about them. I mean, really, who is, right? But what monkeys really like are grapes. In their experiment, the researchers put two monkeys side by side, both doing the same task, but one monkey was rewarded with a cucumber, and the second monkey was given a grape. You will see this on a video. Marilyn and Patrick, could you show the video? So there's two monkeys side by side. The first monkey on the left does the task and gets a cucumber. The second monkey on the right does the same task, but that monkey gets a grape. Now, the first monkey sees the second monkey get the grape. But when the first monkey does the task again, she gets another cucumber, and you'll see what happens. She's banging on the floor. She's rattling the cage. She does the task again. The monkey on the right gets another grape. The poor monkey on the left does the task again, testing the rock against the wall, gets another cucumber. I will not have any of this. Boom. In this experiment, thank you, Marilyn and Patrick, in this experiment, time after time, when the first monkey saw the other getting a grape, while they continued to receive cucumbers, they reacted angrily, sometimes, as you saw, shaking the bars of the cage or literally throwing the cucumber back at the researcher. These monkeys realized quite quickly that they were not being treated fairly, that they were getting the short end of the stick, so to speak. Technically, this phenomenon is referred to as disadvantageous inequity aversion. You might want to write that down. It will be on the test. And it arises when one perceives that they are getting less than the other, or somehow being put at a disadvantage in relation to the other. This instinctual reaction has been found in monkeys, dogs, and little human beings we call children. Here's an example of the latter group. As many of you know, I have two boys, both married to wonderful partners, and between them, I have three granddaughters. My younger son has two of them, Juliana, who we call Jules, who is 2.5 years old, and Amelia, with an E, who we call Emmy, who is about 1.5 years. The other day, I was at their house watching their mother dole out pieces of a tangerine to Jules and Emmy. When she got to the last piece, she gave it to Emmy, the younger. Jules, the stereotypical 2-year-old, reacted angrily, yelling, "That's not fair." A phrase no doubt familiar to any of us who have had the pleasure of raising children. In that scenario, whether accurate or not, fairness to Jules meant not being able to get what she wanted or not being able to get as much as she wanted in relation to her younger sister. My little adorable capuchin monkey, Juliana, was exhibiting disadvantageous inequity aversion. This perceived lack of fairness has great relevance when we look at the state of our UU congregations. It is one of the major causes of conflict. If people perceive that they are not being treated fairly, they will react negatively. And while it may not include throwing food at each other, although there was that one potluck, no, I'm just kidding, there wasn't. It could take the form of arguments during congregational meetings or open complaints about decisions made by leadership. Or the anger could go underground and result in rumors or gossip, lack of involvement in congregational life, and even departure from the congregation. While justice is an admirable quality that Unitarian Universalists see, fairness is what we must strive for and maintain if we are to have harmony in living out our Unitarian Universalist lives. Fairness and justice are terms that are often used interchangeably, and the differences are subtle. They are certainly mutually supportive, but for my message to you this morning, I would like to highlight the differences between fairness and justice and make the case that while justice may elude us as well-meaning Unitarian Universalists, fairness is something that is always available and well within our reach. Justice, as I see it, is systemic. Fairness is individualistic. Justice is played out in the political arena and in the judicial arena. It focuses primarily on the passing and enforcement of laws. Fairness is played out in our homes and our schools and our congregations. It focuses on the quality and the enhancement of relationships. Justice refers to the principle of upholding what is right and fair, ensuring that individuals are treated according to their actions and in accordance with the law. It is a set of ethical and moral standards that guide the behavior of a society. Fairness encompasses the idea of impartiality and equity, ensuring that everyone is given an equal opportunity and is treated without bias or discrimination. It is treating one another in a way that gives everyone a fair chance or opportunity. Justice is what we strive for in our world. Fairness is how we get there. It is, I believe, what the late Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart meant when he wrote that fairness is what justice really is. Fairness is what justice really is. As it relates to congregational life, I believe that justice is what we strive for outside the walls of our congregation. Fairness is what we seek and what we must have within the walls of our congregation. In practice, fairness can be quite complex and also situational. For example, if I share a bagel with my wife on a Sunday morning and the slices are uneven, one slice larger than the other, I will always give the larger slice to my wife. That is not being fair, it's being generous. However, when I bring home a cabbage from the supermarket, as I did the other day, to make stuffed cabbage, a favorite of mine when I was a kid, and my wife reminds me that she can't eat cabbage because it doesn't agree with her, I take stuffed cabbage off the menu for that night's dinner. I do so because it is fairer for neither of us to eat stuffed cabbage if eating it would cause discomfort to one of us. In this scenario, I am not being generous, I am being fair. While this works for stuffed cabbage, it is much more difficult to be fair or just when we consider the world around us. Was it fair, for example, that I sat down to a bountiful meal recently in a home that was safe and warm when others are homeless or unsure where their next meal is coming from? Is it fair that I, as a white heterosexual male, enjoy privileges afforded to me that people of other colors, lifestyles, genders, abilities do not have? No, it is not fair. And as individuals, we do have some recourse. We can vote, we can volunteer our time, we can contribute financially, we can march in the streets. These are actions intended to change the system and instill justice for all. But these actions, as important as they are, will not alone instill a sense of fairness. Fairness instead comes about through our interactions with those around us. Fairness is our ability to rise above our prejudices. Fairness is demonstrating impartial, unbiased, and equitable treatment of others. Fairness is taking only your share. It's taking turns, sharing openly, and listening to what others have to say. Fairness is giving each person what they need to succeed. Fairness is how we abide by the covenants we create, how we actualize the principles that we say we believe in. This congregation's covenant of right relations is beautifully written. Its stated purpose is to ensure a welcoming, warm, and safe spiritual community where all feel loved and accepted. The values of respect, hospitality, support, forgiveness, diversity, and so on speak to who you want to be with each other. But underlying our covenant is a sense of fairness, an understanding that each of us wants to be valued specifically for who we are and what we need. To the degree that we live our covenant, we demonstrate fairness. What fairness is not is equality. Justice is equality, the pursuit of systems and laws that promote equal resources and equal opportunity for all. Equal rights, equal pay, equal protection under the law. Justice is where every individual or group has access to the same opportunities, where everyone is treated the same, regardless of their individual needs or circumstances. Fairness, on the other hand, promotes equity, not equality, but equity. The recognition that each person is unique and requires different resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. Fairness is where everyone gets what they need based on their own particular situation, taking a person's needs and position into consideration so that everyone can have access to the same goals. Here's a classic example. Two people are standing behind a fence trying to watch a baseball game, let's go Mets, being played out on the field in front of them. One person is much taller than the other. Each is given a box to stand on to help them see over the fence, but the box is the same size for each person. So the taller person can now see the ball game with greater ease, but the shorter person still can't see over the fence. Despite having equal resources, that is, the same size box, the shorter person is still at a disadvantage. Equality is not enough to solve the problem. The equitable solution is for the taller person who doesn't need the box to see over the fence to give his box to the shorter person, enabling the shorter person to stand on two boxes, thus resulting in both persons being able to see the game. That's equity. By paying attention to the various ways in which we are different, we create structures that provide everyone with access and opportunities to share the same goals. That is what defines us as Unitarian Universalists. The only way to practice equity is to embrace our diversity, to understand our differences and our varied needs. It requires that we listen with our whole being, that we be fully conscious of our own biases, and prejudices, and that we not let our assumptions guide our decisions. We may not be able to practice justice in our congregation. It almost seems silly to use that word. But we can certainly make equity and fairness a staple of our community and our culture. As Unitarian Universalists, we practice equity all the time, don't we? Or at least we should. When we promise to always speak into a microphone so that everyone can hear, we practice equity. When we ensure that vegan or gluten-free options are available at potluck dinners, we practice equity. When we offer alternative, barrier-free entrances to our building or Zoom services for those unable to attend in person, we practice equity. When we acknowledge and thank congregants for their annual pledge, regardless of the amount, we practice equity. Equity abounds when we offer both spoken and silent joys and concerns. Silent for those who may be too shy or otherwise reticent about sharing in public. Equity abounds when we offer transportation options to older members of the congregation, or respect the right of some to continue wearing masks at services, or temper the tendency to use the word God too much or too little. When we ask people to rise in body or in spirit rather than stand as you are able. When we offer diversity in our Sunday worship services and our choice of music. When we practice equity, we practice fairness. We live the meaning of our commitment to respect the inherent worth and dignity of another by asking and listening and understanding their worth, their needs, and their preferences. And in doing so, we do our best to meet them. In this way, we create a beloved community, a spiritual and social gathering that enables those who prefer grapes to cucumbers to have their fill. So may it be.